I've been always, I've always been the kind of person, I just work with what I got.
Yeah, go.
Like, I've never really had a lot of money for like hardware and like even like plugins and stuff like that. So I've always kind of just worked with what comes stock, try to get by.
Yeah.
How far does this reach? Should I have it real close to my face or?
Do it right there.
Okay, I'm gonna maybe put it right here because that kind of floppy up there. Is that good like that?
Is it album, EP, mixtape? What you call it?
Album.
Album. Cool.
Yeah, I'd call it an album.
Feels like album to me.
Yeah, I think so.
So it is what it is. But what have you been up to since those days?
Since those days?
Yeah.
Bro, everything. Man, I've gone through different evolutions of my creativity since then. Then I was just trying to be the best rapper I could be. Like, I just wanted to bar out everybody,
Yeah.
you know? So that was my focus then. And we had my garage. We used to live right next to the International School of Beaverton, right, like up the street from Aloha.
Okay.
And we used to just cook up in my garage all day. And that was like, you know, a daily thing. We would just get some teas and swishers and just kick it.
Were
And
y'all making those beats?
no way.
Oh man. Okay. All right.
No, I didn't make beats back then.
Yeah.
I think there was one thing that I did where I like made my first like real beat on a DAW, but nah, all those were probably like stolen, to be honest.
Yeah,
We used to steal beats all day.
Me too.
So yeah, and then my family, we lost that house when I was like 18 years old. And so I became like, I was like on the streets, like couch hopping and stuff for like some years after that. And then I stayed with my girlfriend for a couple years and was just surviving really. And then I think I was still making music, but there was a couple years where like I didn't really have the means to do it, you know, because recording always costs money and I didn't have my own equipment. So like there was a couple projects I think that I made throughout from like 18 to like 20. I mean, I've made like 8 albums in my life.
Wow.
So it's been I've made a good amount of stuff. I've always been able to make it happen somehow, but it was really slow. I met a friend named Jem Starks. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was like this cat from Yakima, Washington that came down. We used to go to this studio called Bongo Fury, which is like Al Milliken, like right at the Mac stop. And he randomly got an idea to like go to, what do we do, 20 different cities in 60 days. And we all packed in a van. It was 4 of us. And we just lived in a van for 2 months pretty much. And we're just out there selling CDs and passing out flyers and stuff. Just meeting him, his creativity and his attention to like musicality, I think elevated my skills. And then learning how to, you know, do the street team thing, and that changed my life. I started working on another album, and then I released this album called Lemonade. It was like a dance album. It was like all stolen, like, what was it, Selection? You familiar with Selection? I released that. Jim wanted to do another tour, and this time we were performing and stuff. And I went to go perform, like we did like 3 shows or something. We were going around to just like Northwest shows and stuff. And I got up on stage one night and I just felt like I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. I left the tour early and just went back home and like hit a deep depression for like some months. And then that's when I started teaching myself how to produce. And I got a machine, the MK2, and just started learning how to make beats and like recording on my laptop speaker, just like experimenting, trying to find a new sound. And then that's where, like, I don't know if you remember the sex sale era.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. We'll bring that up, I guess, when you have questions about it. Yeah, and that was a very spiritual kind of fight more than anything, more than like a creative endeavor, I think. Like I was trying to discover the darker parts of myself through my music. Because that's kind of how I've used music a lot of times, is like I use it as a way to know more about myself. That was like an exploration of like the sin in me, you know? And it got really bad. And then I got saved. I gave my life to Jesus, and then I quit making music for like 9 months. And from that time till now, I released probably like maybe 10 songs. So from the Sex Sale album till this album, it's like 6 or 7 years. So that was between there, like I had to rediscover myself and like experiment to try and find out. 'Cause I think to make true art, you have to know yourself. And I didn't really know who I was, so that all the way through these years has been just like trying to rediscover who I am so that I can really like do what I feel God has called me to do with art, you know? So, yeah, and then here's this album, Live from the Place to Be. Yeah, you want to start it off?
Okay, so Live from the Place to Be. I've said it a lot of times, but just so I can have said it on record, it's an incredible album. It's very reminiscent for me of Frank Ocean's Blonde, and I'm not trying to put you in a box there. It's definitely very unique. It's got your own sound. I think of that when it comes to the tone of your voice, as well as like minimal instrumentation on some of the beats and whatnot. Like there's not a whole lot of drums going on throughout it. So that's the only thing that I can kind of compare it to, but it's not really comparable because they're two completely different albums. But because that was something that crossed my mind, it made me curious of who were some of your influences while making this project?
Yeah, I mean, I'm inspired by songwriters, you know, like some of my favorite songwriters, people like Kendrick Lamar, people like Frank Ocean, you know, a lot of the Motown people, and like, you know, I really love song lyrics and structure, because this is the first time I've ever wrote like a full singing album. Most of it's just been rapping. So I had to kind of get into a different mind state with this one. But since I learned how to produce myself, I started like really trying to etch a new kind of aesthetic and try and do things sonically that people aren't really doing, or maybe I haven't heard that I'd like to hear. One thing that was really like a challenge that I took on for this album was to mix like live, like orchestral instrumentation with like a digital kind of sound. So it was like the whole album kind of has this theme that's like a clash between live and digital instrumentation. And I mean, the concept, it kind of has that kind of element to it too. So I really wanted to do something kind of fresh and original. So I tried not to take too much inspiration, although of course, like, you can't help but be inspired by certain people, you know, subconsciously. Of course, Frank Ocean is a big one. Like, I love the way he doesn't use drums. I think drums get in the way of beautiful songs sometimes. So that's it was intentional not to use drums a lot on this album.
You said something there that was very interesting to me that I hadn't even considered until now. When you said the live clashing with the digital and that playing into the concept, we're going to get into a lot of the concept here. Obviously, that's what this interview is for. But just me having like listened through and dissecting it on my own, that's fire. I just want to commend you on that. But yeah, so the album to me feels like a call of action, like we had talked about, basically to put down the phones, get off the digital stuff, live real life. I didn't know that you produced it all. I was thinking, like, for me, how it sounds is like you had like instrumentalists in there with you and y'all were just like cooking up like a band or something like that, and y'all were just cooking up. That's kind of like what I pictured was going on. Knowing that you produced it is like, I don't know, that's dope. I love artists who can produce their own stuff. That's what I've been learning how to do recently. To get into the next question though, the album starts at the end and it ends on Welcome, which to me, I feel like isn't a reach to say that there's somewhat of a backward track list thing going on. You can either nod or shake your head if I'm if I'm correct or incorrect about that. It feels like somebody reflecting on their life, reverse engineering or like deconstructing these moments in your life that have led up to this revelation that you have on the project. Can you tell us a bit about why the choice for the backwards track list on this?
So before I answer that question, I do have to say with the production, I did like the demos and like there's a good portion of it that I did, but my boy Justin, who is the guitarist on the live performance, he's like the the Chad Hugo, like if you know Neptunes, where like he plays all the instruments, like the guitar solos you hear on there, that's him. The string sections he wrote. I don't know how to write music, so he pulled off like a lot of the ear candy and like that live sound that is like prevalent on the album. I used a lot of synthetic like guitar instruments and keyboards and stuff, which he mixed the album too. So he really made it all come to life. So I don't want to leave him out of that. Yeah. But to answer the question, it's not quite a backwards track list, although it does start with the end, or it does start with the end and ends with welcome. Most of my albums, even when I make songs, I create them chronologically. So like when I write my songs, I start in the very beginning and I try to imagine like, okay, through the progression of this song, what would I want to hear next? And I just carve it out from the beginning to the end. Like I don't even write hooks first. Like it just goes chronologically. And the whole album went that way too. And I did that intentionally because making the album was an effort to discover myself. I became a father at the beginning of the product, or at the beginning of the album, and I had another baby at the end of the album. So through the album, like I lived a whole lot of life, and it was a struggle to make it. The album, to some degree, is about itself, if that makes sense.
It's very meta.
Yeah. It's like an album about making the album. And so when I'm writing it chronologically, I knew like there were certain things that I wasn't going to be able to talk about until you got through it. Yeah. Through the, I had my baby boy in the beginning of the album, and Big Risk Taker has always been kind of like the beginning of the album. I'm like looking at fatherhood. I'm looking at like my relationship to God, my relationship to my community, being an artist, which is like all these things feel like tall tasks, but it's just like, okay, let's go. I'm fully knowing that I could fail at all of them, so it's like Big Risk Taker. And so you get the progression of the album, all of them, each track is like a step in my discovery of myself and realizing like, oh, okay, this is what life looks like. A lot of the subject matter is about the obstacles that come with like me trying to be present with my family and be present as an artist and just say yes to all my responsibilities.
Okay, we are free here. So here, to me, sounds like the present moment, acceptance of whatever is at the current time. You have lyrics like, what happens here can only be here and now. These moments only last but a moment. It feels like, an awareness that we can't try to hold on to any one particular moment, because the moment that we try to hold on to the one that's passing, we're bringing ourselves out of the present moment and we're not living, quote unquote, what you call on the album, real life, right? Now we're stuck in the past, or we're stressing about the future or whatever. That's what We Are Free Here feels like to me. Am I hot on this one? Am I cold? Is this like something where, am I hitting it on the mark or not? Can you elaborate on that?
It's yeah, here is right here, right now, this very moment. The whole concept. Me and Jake, who's Jacob from Welch's, who is the voice on "We Are Free Here."
Okay, that's
Me and him, we started having these sessions like 4 or 5 years ago, and we started talking about, like, we would sit down to make music and we would just end up talking for like 10 hours straight. And it started out with a question. We started talking about art, and he referenced this book, and in the book the author talks about seeing paintings, or like, I think it was like hieroglyphics on the wall or something like that, and he was saying that as he was looking at these, some sort of art that these people made, ancient people, and as he was taking them in, he felt like he could hear their voices and see their faces. We just started talking about, okay, what is art? And I came up with this definition that art is a creation or an expression that bears the image of its creator. And there's so much to unpack within that. I actually have a paper that I wrote that I'm getting ready to share eventually on this subject. But I started really like diving into, okay, if that's the definition, being that art is a creation or an expression that bears the image of its creator, that's where I get the idea that, like, you can't really make art unless you know yourself. You know, so if it's all gonna have to flow through me, if it has to be a level of authenticity and a level of sincerity involved in like who you are and what you have to offer, and transmitting that, you know. And I think the only way to really do that is to, one, know yourself, and two, to be able to be live, you know, to be awake and bonded to reality and your responsibilities and what's at hand, you know, in the present moment. So that there's so much I could say in that regard, but that's like what live from the place to be means. Yeah.
The place to be is here.
The place to be is here right now, in the moment. And in Live from the Place to Be, the record, it talks about moments only last but a moment.
Right.
But in real life, moments last forever.
Yeah. Okay.
You know?
I like big risk taker. I feel like we're getting into, to me this feels like, maybe it wasn't intentional, but to me this feels like the song for the masses, if you could say that. Like, it's the one on the project that, if it were me, and I'm not you, so you know, this is a grain of salt, but this feels like the one that sent into radio stations, you know, you're putting out there as the first single or something, you know. This feels like the one that is the catchiest, but it's also very deep, and there's also a whole lot of real life that happens through it. And to me, it represents like an experience that I think anybody goes through when they're about to take a leap of faith, you know. And so if I look at my notes here, you mentioned that this is the actual like chronological beginning of the story, right? And that's what I wrote down. I wrote, this feels like the beginning of the story, just a man working to make it, knowing things could be hard, but is willing to take the chance on life. It also feels like the risk in question could be about a career, it could be about life situations, etc. Like, the risk could go a lot of different ways. And then I guess I just asked, could you tell me if I had a good assessment on this song? But you talked about it a little bit already, but could you dive into what this song means to you, I guess? I feel like that the audience will get more out of that than trying to figure out if I had a good assessment.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I think you're pretty spot on. It's me saying yes to a lot of things, you know, and I like to write in a way that is very personal, but also kind of like open, and like I love like a little bit of like vagueness to it, just so that you can put yourself in it, you know, and it's not like so specific to myself that like you some people can't relate, you know, and maybe you appreciate the story. But with that song especially, I wanted it to be kind of like an anthem for like for anybody that's going to take a big risk, you know. um, and that's really all. That's really as much as, I mean, I could get into like the details of what it means as far as like the particulars of my life, which I shared a little bit. You know, the big risk of being a father, the big risk of saying yes to music, the big risk of saying yes to my community, of trying my best to like be a be a person of consequence, you know, and somebody that actually stands for righteousness. And you know, it's not easy. None of it's easy. It's all comes with obstacles, and it's all like feels life threatening sometimes, because like, you know, it's like it's, at least that's how I am. You know, I tend to get down on myself when I make mistakes, and especially when it's like these things that I'm mentioning really matter to me. So to put myself in a position of taking those things on as a responsibility, like I take responsibility seriously, and so I take that risk seriously too. So that was kind of like the anthem, and I wanted it to feel like, I wanted there to be an element of like, you know, this, you got a date with danger, you know, big risk taker. But also I wanted people to be able to arrive to a place where it's like, I'm gonna take on the possibilities of what could go wrong, and I'm just gonna say yes, take a step out into the unknown. And so yeah, it's an anthem for that, really, in my mind.
That last thing you mentioned of like taking on the responsibilities of what could go wrong, I feel like that's very apparent in, you got two lyrics back to back, and they almost mirror each other. But wouldn't it be so bad? Guess it wouldn't be that bad. It's like, you know, it's like this could go very wrong, but yeah, but it's like, hey, you know, if we're gonna do this, let's look at the bright side. You know, I close my eyes to see more. It feels like if somebody's just looking at the physical attributes of something, they're not getting the full picture, because there's a whole being within that. There's a whole spirit within that, you know. And if I'm just seeing you for the black dude sitting here with, you know, a jacket on or whatever, I'm not seeing the full picture of your humanity. Or and I'm also doing you a disservice by chalking that up and mistaking that as who you are, because that doesn't tell me anything about you as a person. That's what the song feels like to me. It's also one of my favorite tracks. Just so we can get this out the way, big risk taker, I close my eyes to see more, when fate smiles, the parts of me you can't see. Those are my top four right now. So yeah. But anyway, with I close my eyes to see more, can you tell us a bit about what the messaging was there?
It's funny that you say that's one of your favorites, because that's one of those ones I wasn't sure how people like us were going to receive it. Because I have a part of me, you know, I'm half black, half white. So I'm inspired by a plethora of different genres and stuff. And that one felt a little bit outside of what I know people are used to as far as like my music. That's like kind of like pop synth.
Well, I like genre benders, so
Good. Yeah, I know people do. So, I mean, I was like, I felt comfortable putting it on the album, but it definitely is one that I wasn't sure how people were going to receive. So to hear it's one of your favorite is like,
I'm glad it's there. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Um, that song is like, it's about a moment with God in contemplation, you know, and like saying yes to this life, saying yes to my responsibilities, and then being in a position where I don't have the power to make it all happen. And I don't like, even part of the vision and the taking on the responsibilities, like it's all kind of like stewardship to me. It's things that I've been given, not things necessarily that I'm like, if I really had it my way and like I would let my flesh decide, or my desires to decide, I would probably go do a bunch of not good stuff for me. But I think spending time with God in prayer, and spending time with God and allowing him to speak to me, has formed this desire, and like formed the what's the word, the ability, I guess, for lack of a better word, to say yes to these responsibilities. So that was kind of like, okay, I'm going to big risk is like, okay, I'm going to war, and then this is like, before I go, I need to spend time with my God, and this is like him speaking to me. And that song is directly referencing like a moment that I remember being on my knees in my aunt's living room praying, and like not knowing what to do with myself, and God kind of like revealing to me the gifts that he's given me and the things that he's put inside me. And it's like, I've kind of made it sound a little bit mystical, but it's pretty like, I guess God's outside of our language and outside of our ability to like really articulate. So there is an element of like beyond, and it is a little. I think mystical is maybe a right word to some degree. So I wanted it to feel magical, because those moments do feel magical when you're like in the presence of God and like in just prayer, And that's really, the song is greatly about prayer and like receiving what God has given me.
Yeah, what you just said adds a lot of context to the song, just like, because most people will close their eyes to pray, but also you have a line, I can see your face, but it's not with my eyes, so yeah, that just adds a lot of context to that for me. Anybody who's listening, go check out the album to understand what I'm talking about. Yeah, live from the place to be. I said it feels like a call to action for people to basically stop living life on their computers, live in the present moment. I'm sure it goes a lot deeper than that, and I kind of want you to explain that. But you're so, to support my backwards track list theory, and you've already expressed that wasn't necessarily the intention. Part of me feels like it still works. Art, beauty in the eye of the beholder kind of thing, right? So part of me feels like it could still work if we're working backwards from the end of the album to the beginning of the album. Like, in order to say this, I gotta tell it all to you. So I see welcome, right? And on welcome, you talk about a lot of the things that like maybe adding pressure or stress or whatnot. You have some lyrics in there that made me think of that. And then you get into the parts of me you can't see, right? It feels like you're in the element of, just going based off of the title, feels like you're in the element of like you're still kind of like hiding things. I think you mentioned on that track like I hid my face, and was that that's on Welcome?
No, the end.
Oh, the end. Okay. All right. Scratch what I just said. But anyway, parts of me you can't see. That's it. Kind of, there's strings through it all. Yeah. But so maybe that's that moment where on the end, that's the moment that you're referencing on the end, of like hiding your face, and then when fate smiles, it's like God seeing you and being like, yo, like maybe you're not moving 100% right, but I still believe in you. God turned his face on me. That's one of my favorite lyrics. And then what is it? Is that on that song? It's like Mike Jackson's Thriller. Dead man dancing in the street. Yeah. It feels like that moment where it's kind of like, given the way that I used to be living, I shouldn't necessarily be here right now, but I am. And that's God turning his face on me. That's when fate smiles upon me. Numbers feels like that moment of like the realization maybe of there's all this vanity stuff that we all care about. I mean, you even have a moment in there where you say like, these things that I've been pushing for, or like focusing my time on, they don't matter. It's just, I think you call it dust. Vapor. Okay.
Which is a reference from the scripture, from the Bible.
Okay. I like that. We'll have to break that down here in a little bit. But it's like that realization, and then death was never for me feels like a moment where a piece of you dies or the former you dies. And then it also references back to that Mike Jackson's Thriller, Dead Man Dancing in the Street line. There's, I feel like, a lot of that on this project as a whole, of like ego deaths and stuff like that going on. But then Live from the Place to Be feels like the first glimpse. This is why I felt like I had to break it all down backwards for you. Yeah. Live from the Place to Be feels like the first glimpse of the actual real life that you're referring to, the present moment, you know. And it's like, man, I'm here. Also, just a little, I don't know what to call it, Easter egg or whatnot, but it's pretty fire that you have death and live as like in the titles right next to each other. But yeah, and then I close my eyes to see more as like, I had that first glimpse, I'm trying to get back to it. And then Big Risks Taker is like, you know, this is something I've never experienced before, but you know what, I'm gonna go for it. And then We Are Free Here is like, we're here. And then the end is like, you know, anyway. So that's why I kind of pictured it could work forward and backwards.
I think you might be right.
Yeah, thanks. Cool. So yeah, Live from the Place to Be is could you see how is that what we were on? Yeah, Live from the Place to Be. My bad, I'm long-winded too.
Right in the middle of the whole album.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. So tell us more about that for you. And after I just gave you that whole long ass breakdown.
What is the question exactly?
I guess just tell us more about the track, because I gave them my assessment of it, or I gave them my breakdown of it, or at least how I picture it. And to be honest with you, while I was talking your ear off, I forgot my question. So if you could just tell us what the song means to you.
You know, the interesting thing as you're speaking, like, I never thought about it being like a backwards, like starting from the back and going to the end. The end is kind of like closing a chapter, and then it starts the new chapter with We Are Free Here, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing about this album is this whole album for me can be experienced in a moment. Yeah. I think the reason why they all intertwine is because they all are kind of like different fractals of the same sentiment, you know? With Live from the Place to Be, that is kind of like the anchor for the whole album, and it is kind of like it's like, having said all of this throughout the rest of the album, this is where I stand. Like, what do I do right now? You know, like, and you know, I would like to kind of look at the lyrics of it, because the lyrics really speak for themselves. You know, it's like,
They don't show up here on Spotify.
No, I didn't put them on there. What does it? It says,
Do you have them like on your phone?
yeah, it's really interesting. Like, there's like different pieces of each song within that song. It's a complex record.
Yeah.
I think that's because it's kind of like an awakening moment for me. You know, it kind of represents like the emergence of myself into the present moment. You know, and it's like, okay, awareness, fully here right now. Boom. Now I'm realizing like how amazing this experience is, but also how dead the other experience. I wanted to stay away somewhat from making it like an attack on, like, that part of it is kind of more specific to myself, although I think this is just a theory, but I think like being addicted to screens, social media, electronics, games, all these kind of things, I think they do kind of, they're counterproductive to knowing ourselves fully, and they're a little bit counterproductive to like being live in the present moment. This is, I think it's worth like studying almost, because there's so many things that are, I find to be hindrances to my experience of like being responsible for what God's given me, you know? So a lot of that, especially in the beginning of the album, is kind of like, oh, I've not been living real life, you know? So it's like, pull me out of this cyber, put me on to some real, don't want no virtual, you know? And it's like, yeah, everything kind of coming together, like just seeing the spectrum of existence and realizing like, oh, this is where I want to be, live here right now.
So we're about halfway through the album. Last track was Live from the Place to Be. Now we are on Death Was Never For Us. Going chronologically, this feels like a reflection point of like you just experienced Live from the Place to Be. You just experienced being in the present moment, and then looking back and realizing kind of like what you just said about how like you're also realizing how dead the other experience was for you, and how much it was lacking in the sense of like getting the full experience of life. That's chronologically. In reverse, it feels like that moment of realizing that, you know, you're kind of living a dead life or whatever, dead man dancing in the street before you experience real life. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, all of that can be right. All of that, I think all of that is right in ways, you know, that's the beautiful thing about art to me. Like true authentic art, like I said, like I discover myself through it. So like even like I listen to my album like at least every other day, and I'm discovering more about myself as I listen to it, and like hearing you, like, and it reflecting off of you, and like hearing your relationship to it is even helping me discover more about the album. And you know, the album is me to a great degree. Like I very much feel like this album is my life, you know. It represents a lot about who I am, and so that's the beautiful thing about it. So a lot of the things you're saying, I think they're true, you know. They're maybe not like this maybe not exactly what is intended, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. That song is kind of like, here we are, you know. It's like, here we are. Okay, I want to be live. I want to be present. Here we are. Rip me from the dirt under my feet. Never thought it'd feel this good to be out of this coffin, walking. You know, like, here I am. Let's go. And that, you know, my verse that has a feature from Jake, who's on We Are Free Here. And so that song is like, it's about this, it's a what's the right word? It's like, it's a representation of, it's one facet, I suppose, of like the live experience. And when I talk about being live, I think maybe it goes without saying, but it's not just about like creating music. I have to tap into that live experience when I'm raising my children. I have to tap into that live experience when I'm loving my wife. I have to tap into that live experience when I'm having hard conversations with family or friends, or when I'm enjoying myself. I have to, you know, it's like, it's a state of being that is like, for me, a challenge to maintain, but it is everything. You know, I think that's how you hear God's voice. You know, it's like being, that state is everything to me. So that is a facet of it. In that song, I'm talking about loving my wife. You know, so it's like, hot coffee, my love is awake. Morning hugs, I can never forsake.
Yeah, I had never even thought about that. There was a point early on where like my first couple of listens through, I thought that the album might have been about a relationship, which I'm thinking like a romantic relationship. However, I quickly realized, third or fourth listen that might not be the case, and then I started listening more, and it was like, oh, this is deep. This is like spiritual. So I'm glad that track is in there, and that you even said that, because that lets me know that I wasn't completely off the ball, at least on one of the songs.
It's interesting that you say that, because there's a lot of lyrics that feel like they're about a relationship, and they are to some degree. Like if you listen to The End, that sounds like a breakup song, kind of.
Yeah, it does.
But it kind of is. It's about my relationship to a lifestyle, and it's intoxicating. That's when it's like, you play my song and made me want to stay, but it wasn't that good. Good, yeah. I felt like I was talking to a person, and I think whatever that state of being is, it is intoxicating, and it is something like that manifests itself in a very similar way to like an attachment to a person in a love relationship. So I think a lot of the lyrics that have to do with separating from that state of being, they do feel like a breakup.
I like the way you did that. It's another example of writing lyrics that are very personal, but keeping them somewhat, what's the word you use, like vague, so that somebody else could put themselves into the song. They can see themselves in the song, and that song can apply to different moments in their life that may not be the same as yours. They may be, but like, yeah. So that's really cool. Numbers. So I actually had, how I had two ways to interpret the album mentally for me. I had two ways to interpret numbers. And it's about flipping the title. So basically numbers and numbers, right? So, yeah, so the first half of the track where it's kind of just more talking feels like the numbers section. The second half of the track feels like the numbers section. You had a couple of lyrics, like on the first half of the track, on the numbers half of the track you had, it's not like I don't know the truth, but I just forget how important it is. Like, there's that lyric. There's another one, right, waking up and realizing that none of this matters, all this stuff that, it feels like being numb to not only the truth, but being numb to everything that somebody was chasing. That's why I felt like that name Flip kind of had some relevance. And then the second half where you're just telling people like, yo, like, regardless of whatever's going on, like, keep working, keep, stay focused. You have so many like affirmations just in that second half. So that was my interpretation of the song. Don't know if it's what you intended, but based off of your reaction when I said it, it probably wasn't. But can you tell us more about what you intended?
Yeah, that song is that's another one of those here we are kind of songs, like right here, right now. That song is basically a letter to my son. The first portion of the song kind of paints the picture of the war that I'm fighting. I used to work construction landscaping when my son was first born, and man, this is hard. Like, this is hard. And I used to work from 7 a.m. to like 7 or sometimes 9 p.m. I'd come home, and the only time that I had to work on music was between like midnight and like anytime before I went to work. So a lot of this album was created during those hours.
Pulling all-nighters?
Oh, for sure. For sure. And then going straight to work.
Yeah.
Like making sacrifices on my health just to like make this album. I remember I had a day where I was sitting in the parking lot crying before I went into work. Just like, it's hard, man. It's hard saying yes to all these things, and especially, and I'm not the type of person to get like, I don't need no pity party. I don't need any. I'm not trying to make excuses at all. The situation I have was a hard one, and I had to I had to fight through it. And so it's like coming home from work, lights on, is anybody home? I just came back from a war unknown. Things that I don't talk about. 2 angels gather around me, my children, hold me down and crown me. I guess they see what God sees, reason why he found me. Welcome you to family, unbreakable. Put your phone down. This is a picture untakeable. And it's kind of just like standing on the things, like it's kind of like a pep talk for myself, but also like showing my son what this looks like. It's just like, trying to be an example for him and also articulate it clearly, the dangers that lurk, the things that'll try and keep you from living this life that is like a live person. I think it's everything, I think that state of being live, it's everything.
When Fate Smiles, this is, to me, the most beautiful work on the project. That's why I told you it was one of my favorites. I want to play it just so they can hear it, but I want to play it so Aaron can hear it too. Aaron, you down to hear this track? Okay.
The standing bass, is real. It's live played too. Wow. Okay. The standing bass on that one is played live. Yeah. And I originally I used the synthetic one on machine and played the chords, but then when we had the string players come in for live from the Place to Be, the record, we had them just like, you might as well play it. We might as well get this one like live recorded to have that. It just took it to another level.
Never thought that I could make it without you. I think the next line was like, I'm doing just fine or something like that.
I'm all good and I found it out.
Yeah, okay. Who is you? Or is that the kind of thing where you're talking about like the relationship with the lifestyle?
Yeah, I would say it's it's talking about the relationship with the lifestyle. Like, I feel like whatever that is, whatever that state of being is, like I kind of personified it. I kind of made it into a character so that I could form language to really talk about it. So yeah, it's definitely about old ways of thinking, old ways of living. I'm not even speaking from a place of like, I've got it all figured out. I'm out, like I'm here. I'm fully, I still bounce back and forth. This album is still happening to me right now, So it's all a process of discovery and just getting closer and closer to, being live with every moment. That one was kind of like realizing the sacrifices that come with saying yes to a lot of my responsibilities. I got to sacrifice time with old friends, with old habits, with old ways of coping, And so it's kind of just like, yeah, that's what that one is about. I got to do it my way. I got to do it the right way.
That's incredible. It also feels like that song, it feels like it could work as like the moment just before Big Risk Taker, where it's like there's the realization of I'm doing things y'all's way, but you know what, I'm gonna do it this way, even though I'm not sure how it's gonna turn out. It feels like it could like work really well together with Big Risk Taker, and the fact that Big Risk Taker is the third song from the beginning, this one is the third song from the end. Like I feel like there's almost a mirror effect with this project. If we were to look at it that way, I already did the forward backward thing, but if we were to look at it as a mirror, I feel like the project works really well as well. You got live and death on both sides of the mirror immediately. Live from the Place to Be and Death Was Never For Us, for those who need the full title. But then like there are certain tracks that kind of like line up. Not completely, because there's the parts of me you can't see I feel like would line up better with, I close my eyes to see more. But I feel like there are certain sections where that works. Speaking of the parts of me you can't see, it's very interesting. It's one of my favorite songs. I've kind of given my analysis of the album working backwards and where it fits in that. So, if you can tell me where that lines up chronologically and how it was intended, if you want to share that, or if you want them to go listen, you can tell them that. But, what does that mean to you?
There's certain things about the album that I definitely like do I want to tell? Do I want to reveal what it means? That song is definitely like very personal. Um, I will say it's a multiple entendre. So there's a one way it's written from how I think God sees me, like my God's relationship to me. Then there's my relationship to my son, or both my kids, and then there's my relationship to my art.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of it is like about some of the intricacies of and the beauty of being an artist in the craft of it, and how delicate that process can be, and how vulnerable it is, but also it's like I found ways to be able to do it. I've had times in the past where I was like, and even still to this day, sometimes there's things about sharing my art that feel like a little bit too vulnerable, because a lot of it is my story, a lot of it is my real life. So sharing it with people sometimes feels like scary. So a lot of the song has to do with wrestling with that, and like uh, hidden so deep, my voice sings in your sweet melody. That's like I feel. I love the landing line for me is the last line of the hook where it says, what does it say? Hidden so deep, my face shines when they see in you as me. You know, and it's like thinking about it from God to me. I think God's the greatest artist of all time. And I think his greatest creation is mankind. I think the greatest creation he ever made, in my opinion, is Jesus. But we were supposed to be that, so I think God sees us, especially through Jesus. We're made in God's image, so it's like when they see, or my face shines when they see in you is me. And that's, yeah, I feel the same way with my children. I'm trying to instill things from myself, the things that it's like a through line, It's like God to me to my children, and then me to my art. My art is so, like, my art is, matters a lot to me, So that's why that song was necessary, in my opinion. Like, I wanted to kind of share a little bit about how, without like saying it right out, it's like this means a lot to me, and I do feel like I have to protect parts of myself, because the way that I create is a very vulnerable endeavor, and so I've found ways to do that in a tasteful way, and I enjoy the task of being able to share parts about myself in a way that other people can relate to. And I think this song is almost talking about the process of doing that, of like being able to share something with people that is for them, but also like I'm within it,
Thank you for that. Welcome. I mentioned how I felt about it in verse. Um, Welcome to me, based off of things that you've said here, um, feels like the start of the new chapter. How you said the end was like the end of a chapter in your life, the end of like, walking away from a certain lifestyle. Welcome feels like giving somebody a map to a promised land, and you're like, I'll be waiting there for you when you get there. And then they walk in and you're like, welcome. You're kind of like reflecting on a lot of the stuff that you went through in order to get there. If you could tell us about Welcome, as well as, I got a little side question for this one. If there was one thing that you wanted people to take away from this project, leaving the album, I guess what would that be? What would you want people to take away from this?
Welcome, the title and the sentiment from the album is kind of like, it's more to myself. It's like God saying welcome to me. Like, oh, you've seen what I intended for humanity, and I hope I did my job of making it clear within that song that I am not like fully there, I've been way too lonely these days, but I won't let you take that from me. It is kind of like a personal journey for me. And yeah, and then I talk about, like I came all this way to survive and learn how to die. And it's like, it encompasses a lot of the album, and like, it is like a shedding the old ways of thinking and saying yes to the new ways. And it's a journey in itself. And now I think Welcome is the perfect title for the end of the album, because the story continues. This is just a story about the discovery of it. So now, like, I have the responsibility of like carrying the torch, so to speak, and like just continuing to discover myself and in all these different ways, and just continuing to say yes to my responsibilities. And I think what I want other people to take away is, take away whatever you want from it at the end of the day. But I think my job is done if people start their own journey of being live in the present moment.
This is my favorite album of the year. So if y'all want to go check that out, yeah, of course. No, thank you. So if y'all want to go check that out, you can look him up at D''Marcus on Spotify. The album is called Live from the Place to Be. It is everything that we've mentioned here today and more. Yeah, go ahead, tell them that.
You said Spotify, so I wanted it to be clear. It's everywhere too, Yeah.
Thank you, man. Where can they follow you at? Where can they find you on social, YouTube, stuff like that?
Everything is DeMarcus. DeMarcus Live is for Instagram. I have a TikTok, but I don't really like TikTok too much. So, most places you can find me just by typing in DeMarcus, DMARCUS. And then because I'm like nobody, you're going to have to sometimes maybe type in the album title and you'll be able to find me that way. Live from the Place to Be.
For anybody who wants to support this project or support what you got coming up, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so I'm getting ready to launch a website here soon that'll have a lot of ways for people to purchase the album. I have CDs, and I'm putting merch together and stuff. That's really like the biggest way for people to support. And of course, if they want to support financially, that's the way. I'm not in it for financial gain, although that's a goal of mine. It is something that I would like to be able to do this full time. So those are ways that people can help. But at the end of the day, just sharing the music. When you see a show, come to it. Invite people to come to it. Very simple.
Thank you, DeMarcus. We are here at 503 Records. Shout out Aaron B from the 503 for allowing us to use this space and always showing love to what's going on in his community. Thank you for the music, for the art, for the years of grinding that it took to get to this place, for the years of self-work that it took to get to this place, because that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, but that's something that I recognize because, I've told you I got something coming up, and I like to tell my friends it was 20% actual writing and recording. The rest of it was living life, discovering myself, self-work. So that's something that I at least want to talk about or have said, because although I don't know your personal journey, because I'm not there with you all the time, I can see the amount of work and the amount of you that you put into this. And so I want to commend you for it coming out the way that it did, because I personally love it, and I can tell that you do too. And yeah, man, go check out the project, man. This is, thank y'all for swinging down the Rose City Vine. And y'all can clap it up if you want to at home. Thank y'all for swinging down the Rose City Vine and checking out DeMarcus Live from the Place to Be. Have a good one, y'all.